If you're looking to spruce up your space with an accent wall, then this video is for you. I've got 3 tips for you that'll help you avoid some problems with this type of project, save you some time and an unnecessary amount of effort. Yo, what's cracking folks? Jeremy Vassar here. I'm a professional painter of over 20 years and I've painted many an accent wall in my day. It's something we do quite often for our clients, so I've got my process pretty well nailed. I've got 3 tips for you. The first one is about sequencing and a bit of technique, and the second 2 are about product selection. So let's get to number 1, shall we? Usually when we're asked to do an accent wall, or feature walls are sometimes called, it tends to be a much darker or different color than the rest of the room. Red and navy blue was in for a while, way back in the day, and nowadays we do a lot of dark gray walls. What that means is you're going to have one very dark wall or very different color wall in between a bunch of lighter walls running into it. So you've got 3 or 4 straight cuts that you need to do that are going to be between a very dark color and usually a much lighter color. You've got the line between the top of the wall and the ceiling, the lines on the left and the right of that accent wall that are running into those side walls, and then your baseboard. Once all those other surfaces are dry, it's time to then go ahead and get those straight lines on your accent wall with your darker product. It's probably going to be either a paint or a primer. We'll get to that in a minute. The only thing I taped out on this wall was the baseboard, but that's because I'm really confident in my brushing abilities and getting clean cuts with the ceiling and the walls. But if that happens to not be you, you can go ahead and tape out the same way I did on the baseboard, and you can tape the side walls as well as the ceiling line. I really like yellow frog tape. It works really well, and if you seal it in really tightly along the edges, you'll get some really clean pulls. If you do get any bleed through, you can touch that up with whatever paint that you need to do, but yellow frog tape works super well, particularly for applications like this. If you've been finding this video useful, then you may be interested in joining our online community, which is called Paint Your Home Now. This group includes our interior painting fundamentals course and pro painter support. If you get jammed up on a job, you can message me directly in the app and I'll get back to you within 24 hours, probably way sooner than that because I'm in there all the time. Anyways, if that sounds like it's up your alley, check out the link in the description and I'll see you in there. So now that the connecting walls are done and you're taped out and all of that, we are ready to move into number 2, which is primer selection. As I mentioned before, accent walls are often a much darker color than the rest of the room, and that can lead to doing way too many coats of paint. Back in the day when we had to do a lot of red walls, certain paints took like 6 coats to cover, which is a big pain in the butt. A way to avoid this headache is to use a tinted dark gray primer. Most paint stores will tell you how dark of a primer you should use, and they really do help. My current favorite primer to use is Fresh Start Primer from Benjamin Moore. It is quite thick, it has really good pigmentation, and it's also what we used in the accent wall that you're watching in this video. Another little bonus tip for you is to get a slightly darker primer than you think you need. Over the years, I've just seen that work out better. If the accent wall is a touch darker after you prime it than the color you're going to go over it with, that tends to provide the most uniform finish after you go over it with your finish coats. Now that the wall is primed and ready to go, we are ready to apply our finish paint, which is tip number 3, paint selection. Circling back to some stuff that I said earlier in the video, a lot of accent wall colors are much darker and more vibrant than what gets used in the rest of the room, and heavily pigmented paints can behave strangely, particularly in the cheaper varieties. A low quality paint that's in a dark red or blue, it can just cause you to have to do a ton of extra coats. I've seen it a bunch, they just don't cover well. They also have a tendency to show lap marks, which is where the roller has overlapped itself, and it's also prone to picture framing, which means the cut-ins don't blend in with the rolling, and then it causes like a picture frame. So you can see the cut-ins exactly around your wall, which is not what you're going for. You want everything to look nice and uniform and everything blend together and just look like one solid surface. The way we address these issues is twofold. One, we bump the tier of paint that we use up on the accent wall. It used to be we used a lot of Duration from Sherwin-Williams, but when we did accent walls, we would bump up to Emerald, which would perform much better in the darker colors. Nowadays we use Emerald for everything because it's pretty sweet. But if you're used to using a mid-tier wall paint, consider bumping up to a higher tier of paint, whatever brand that you like. In general, the more premium wall paints perform better in their deep bases and ultra deep bases, which is likely what you're going to be using on your accent wall. You're probably only going to be using 1 gallon of paint, so it's not going to break your budget just to have 1 gallon of premium paint if you want to use a more budget option for the rest of the room. The other thing I like to do with accent wall paint is to drop the sheen down from what we used in the surrounding walls. Now, like I mentioned before, heavily pigmented paints can behave oddly, particularly in the higher sheens, so eggshell, satin, semi-gloss. Those paints can be particularly tricky to work with. But if you drop down to a less aggressive sheen, if you look at this sheen chart for a second, most wall paints fall in that matte and eggshell, sometimes satin range. In the video that you're watching us paint this wall, we drop down to Emerald Flat, which is a great paint. It's not as durable as Emerald Matte, but I'm not worried about it because in general, most of the time with accent walls, the goal is for it to look aesthetically pleasing, which flat paint definitely does do that, and it just helps the rolling and the cut-ins blend in really nicely. It hides all the defects in the wall as well, or a lot of them. And for this accent wall that we did, there's gonna be a big TV going up there, a big piece of furniture going up, so it's not gonna get like touched or anything like that, so we're not really too worried about durability in that instance. Turned out awesome. Just consider that when you go to choose your paint, get a higher tier and drop the sheen down. I don't think you'll be disappointed. If you found this video at all useful, then you may also like this video over here where I go over the best paints for high moisture bathrooms, which is also important to not mess up. That's gonna do it for me. Y'all take it easy, work smart, and have a good one. Peace.